Welcome back to Cool Clubs. This is our Technology Explained series. This first section is going to be about tipping golf shafts. I think people are going to be pretty blown away when they see what happens to a Ventus golf shaft.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it?
So, Mark, you've done all the hard yards on this. You've done 10 years of work, 10 years of work on this one machine itself and many other years in the industry. Yeah. Let's run down, maybe give everyone just a heads up straight away, like what is shaft tipping? And then explain how we're going to kind of talk about where we got to today and then some specific products. So if people hang in there, they're going to start learning about some golf shafts throughout this podcast.
Right. Well, we always, everyone kind of understands that you tip a shaft to get stiffer, right? So, everyone just assumes you tip it an inch and it gets, quite a bit stiffer, and you tip it a quarter inch, it does less, and all that. And so, we always kind of understood that to some extent. But, as recently, we heard a lot of guys on tour tip everything an inch. Pretty common on tour, actually. And basically, that's making it stiffer. But it does other things than that. So we're actually changing our fitting software to look at all the shafts as they're tipped, not just when they're going up in frequency and getting stiffer, but what else are they doing? Are they going lower? They're changing the torque, and they change a lot of things.
Yeah. Actually, funny, we're going to sidetrack real early. I always wondered in my head, like, why does the tour van tip everything an inch?
Yeah, and I don't do that all the time, but it's pretty prevalent out there, to be honest with you.
But I heard a good answer for it, right?
What's that?
So when they say, right, here's a new golf shaft, let's say X PGA Tour player wants to try this shaft. They tip it an inch, they give it to them, they play it. If they want it softer, well, they can make it softer now.
That's a good point.
If they, what I mean? So they've got wiggle room.
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way.
It was it was interesting.
That's a good answer. Yeah. I'm not sure that's all the reason they do it, but they do tip a lot.
It would make sense, right?
Right.
Okay. So just going backwards a little bit, tipping a golf shaft, when you get them blank, they are uncut. You can you can trim from the butt end, which is the end you hold, or the tip end, which is the end that is installed into the golf club.
Right.
So this is just talking about what happens when the end installed into the head is cut. We've measured 1/4 of an inch increments,
right?
And you've got some examples here, and you've hand-picked some examples of golf shafts that some people may know, some people may not.
Right, it's just a big array of them, basically. I picked some shafts from ladies flex up to really stiff double X's on tour type stuff, and it's interesting to see what happens with them all. Some of them change dramatically, even change their launch characteristics from low to mid to high, whatever. And some of them don't change at all, which is really interesting, and we never knew that. That's kind of an interesting part of it.
So I guess we're super into detail. What Cool Clubs do is different to many other companies. So we're dialing in, even when the lady golfer, the junior golfer comes in, we're making sure that the final product they receive works well. So people think, why am I bothering tipping a lady's golf shaft? Well, let's start there.
Yeah, apparently there's not much reason to in a lot of cases because it doesn't change it much.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so let's kind of go through the list here. I've got a bunch of shafts on a big list here, and we'll kind of go through them. They start with the ladies' shafts, and basically what we did is we took all these different shafts, and every shaft that we sell, actually, it's in our fitting matrix, and we tipped them, basically 0, 1/4 inch, half, 3/4, and an inch. And we have that in our database. So when actually doing a fitting here at Cool Clubs, we're looking at, specifically which tip shaft is best. So each shaft basically becomes 5 different shafts, right?
Yep.
And they all do slightly different things, and some do more and some do less. So the first ones I got up here was an Acra, a real popular Acra ladies shaft. This is an M0, so ladies flex. And on the old frequency or FM chart, it's like 1.0. A 5.5 was back then was a regular, and a 6.5 was a stiff. But so obviously it's a very soft shaft. And what we got in this column here is actual S3 flex, which we go in ones, right? So 54, 55, 56, all the way up. But we're publishing the nearest 10, and that'll be another video we're coming out with. We're gonna basically give a list to the industry, anyone wants to look at it, on how stiff all these shafts are relative to each other. Because you really can't just look at, one says stiff and one says regular. I mean, there are literally stiffs that are way too soft for me to swing, and there are stiffs that are way too stiff for me. That's a huge variety. Stiff doesn't mean anything. It mostly means relative to that brand, the stiff is stiffer than the regular. It doesn't mean that the stiff in this, line of clubs is stiffer than the stiff in that one.
It's just terminology.
It's confusing, yeah. It's a bit terminology. And honestly, it's partially a marketing term.
100%. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember years ago, a big OEM, I was talking to that does a lot of business in Japan and stuff, and we were talking about shaft flex and stuff, and they told me their regular in the U.S. is labeled stiff in Japan.
Just an ego thing?
It's a different marketing thing. No, it's just the marketing over there. They just market them differently. So they actually, it's same shaft, right? So which one's regular? Is it regular or stiff? Well, it depends what market you're in.
Yeah.
That's really not the way to look at it, in my opinion. But that's what happens.
Well, and that's why, we've got the luxury. We've got this machine. We've got your knowledge. We've got all the fitter knowledge here. We don't have to abide by those rules anymore.
No, we don't. We go by our own scale, basically, which is S3 playability number. And like I said, we're going to publish those to the nearest 10, so you get an idea of how stiff some are to another. So watch the website. We'll have a lot of those posted up there. But, we go into detail on single numbers for what we do for fitting.
So let's look at FM. And like I say, FM isn't the be-all and end-all. It's just an understanding. But people would expect, and when you say tipping a golf shaft, you expect the FM to increase, which means you expect the golf shaft to get exponentially stiffer as you trim it.
As you trim it off the tip, you typically think the frequency, or FM is a version of that, gets stiffer as it gets tipped. And some of them do, but some of them really don't.
So this lady shaft literally doesn't really change at all.
No. So it goes from 1.1 to 1.2, basically, which is, a tenth of a flex, almost nothing. And you can see by our published numbers, we publish this as a 0 shaft flex. It's a low mid-launching shaft. Relative to that speed, most everything's going to be low launching if you're not bending it that much. And obviously the launch angle goes down about a half a degree as you tip it. But as far as that, the flex really didn't change much. The torque went down a little bit. The frequency didn't change hardly at all. So
the torque didn't even go down half a degree.
No, not that much. So not that big a change. Here's another one. Here's the M1 in the same shaft, just to see the difference. This didn't change much either. It actually changed enough to change it from a mid-launching shaft to a low-launching shaft when you tipped it.
Yep.
But as far as its playability and how stiff it plays, it really didn't change much. It went from 2.3 to 2.3, tipping it.
And the torque literally didn't adjust at all. So the player can't really feel that either.
Yeah, no, that's not even noticeable. So basically these two shafts, if you gave you one tipped an inch and one tipped not at all, you probably couldn't even tell the difference. Okay. The machine basically almost can't tell, and it measures in hundreds of flexes. So it's an interesting thing, right?
Okay.
Next shaft we got up here is we went into some senior shafts. So this is the new graphite design CQ. Really high launching shaft, which is interesting because what we're kind of seeing is these high launching shafts with the very weak tips don't seem to change as much as some of the other ones. But this changes a little bit. So it goes on our scale, almost a full flex actually.
Right.
From a 15 all the way up to a 25 tipped an inch. So this one does move a lot actually.
So to give someone some context there, when you're jumping up a whole, 10.
Yeah, that's like basically going from a 5.5, we used to call, which was regular back then, to a 6.5. It's a completely different flex. It's like a whole different player.
And it changes quite linear. So you nip a little bit off, and you get the same amount as you trim it all the way out.
Yeah, and most of that seems to happen. Obviously, you have a decent club, different shafts made with decent materials. As you start tipping off, same amount each time, similar sort of thing starts happening.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like you're taking a quarter off there and a quarter off the middle. It's all coming from the same spot. So.
Yeah.
So that shaft does get goes from a 15 to a 25, which is a full flex.
Okay.
And the CPMs went up almost the same. So 2.8 up to 3.4. That's a pretty substantial change.
Yeah.
0.6 is 0.6 of a flex. It's moving more than that because the torque actually went down 0.4, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
It's almost a half degree of torque. That makes it play quite a bit stiffer. So the combination of the CPMs going up and the torque going down makes this play quite a bit stiffer. Okay. It's still a high launching shaft. It's a super high launching shaft anyways.
It's one of our highest launching shafts.
Yeah, it is actually. Great fairway wood shaft. So it's kind of maxing out on that 2 number there. But that's kind of what happens. Then you've got this. So it basically goes from 15 to 25 on that particular shaft. Here's another shaft that's platinum. This is a Japanese shaft. The shaft we do really well with. It's a super high launching shaft, really soft. It's actually, again, to kind of show you the difference. It's saying it's a stiff.
Yeah.
We're categorizing as a senior, right? So, it's stiff relative to the other ones in the set. But this is a, sub 50 gram, some 40 gram shaft.
Yes.
So it's super soft. And the tip's very soft, so it's a super high launching shaft. But overall, the flex doesn't change at all. It's basically a 25 all the way across the board. We got rounded at 30, and the CPMs don't change at all.
So it's just one of those shafts that you might as well just have it straight in.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of difference what you do with it.
Okay.
Then we got the next shaft we got on here. We got some regular flex shafts. This is a Cruel Club shaft that we use. It's called a Blue 50. This is basically a blue board, and the reason I put it up here is everyone kind of knows a blue board.
Yeah, Mitsubishi.
Mitsubishi, kind of in the middle. It's not a high launching, not a low launching. It's a mid launching shaft. This is a regular flex, so it's right in the middle of the specs. You can see the torque goes down a tiny bit. So it goes up almost about a half a flex when you tip it an inch. Okay. It goes from a 39 to a 42, so that's a little less than half. So it does move, but not a ton. And it definitely changes. It's still mid launch, as you tip it more and more. It actually goes. That would be a little bit higher actually, which is interesting.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. As you've tipped it an inch, it's essentially going a quarter of a degree higher than what it did straight in.
Right. So it's a little different, right?
Yeah.
You assume most every shaft goes lower, and they don't.
Well, and here's the thing: I think people should really know. Like, this is our secret sauce.
Right. So what we get, yeah, exactly. This is what we get out. This is why we don't get returns and why we fit shafts into people and they work, right? Because we know what they actually do when you do all this stuff. And we're just learning more and more. In this last year that we've been messing with the tipping, we're learning a lot more about what happens. Enough to change their entire fitting system to basically look at all these tip shafts and what they are individually, not as same shaft just tipped a little.
Yeah. Like, right. You're not bucketing everything into this is what happens with high launch regular and a low launch regular. It's just
whatever happens to that particular shaft is that changes the software and what we recommend for people. So kind of interesting there. And then we've got here's another Platinum, a Platinum 4. Again, it doesn't move at all. It's still a regular.
Okay.
Well, I put this up too because this is actually a Platinum 4 stiff. And earlier we talked about Platinum 3 stiff. They both say stiff on them. One measures on a frequency scale about 5.5 and one's 4.0. So, I mean, they're not the same shaft.
Senior, a regular, and a stiff all in one.
Yeah, exactly. So we're calling it a regular, and it says it's stiff on it. And the other one with the stiff, we're calling them senior. So, I mean, what it says on it, again, kind of goes out the window.
So the stiff tipped an inch in that golf shaft. The torque, am I right there looking at the torque increasing a little?
Yeah, it did actually a little bit. Basically, there must be some low torque stuff in there. It did change a bit.
Yeah. Torque increased a little, launch increased a little. So that's a really weird golf shaft.
Yeah, it is a strange golf shaft. It's very soft in the tip, and it's super good materials, right? This is a platinum. This is their high end of high end. So some different things happen when you put really high modulus material in light shafts.
And it's something to think about as a fitter when you're out there. Like, if you're trying to increase ball flight, this is really good information. It's like, well, if I'm trying to increase ball flight, don't tip this thing. I need to drop down an entire flex. I need to keep it straight in. There's certain things
there's a bunch of different things you got to do. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So don't assume that you tip it an inch and it gets a half flex stiffer or whatever, because that's not the case.
Okay.
And then we got some stiff shafts in here. Again, I used our Cool Clubs blue because it's a blue board. It's very similar. And you can tell actually, from it's a mid-high launching shaft. Once you get up to about an inch, it becomes a mid-launching shaft.
Okay.
So it does change that.
So that one went up a good few cycles too.
It went quite a few cycles. So it goes from basically a 59 to a 65. So it goes about a half a flex as you tip it an inch. And the frequency goes up about 5, which is about a half a flex.
Yeah. And torque, that was kind of very expected. Torque went down a little, launch went down a little.
Right,
flex
and you'll see that in the kind of the standard looking EI curves that you see out there, which a lot of shafts are, Graphite Design, for instance, all of them are very similar. Some are high launching low, but they're all pretty traditional EIs. As you tip them, they go up and they get slowly stiffer and they go slowly lower for the most part.
Okay. So speaking of, we got another graphite design.
We got another graphite design here. We got a
DI,
an iconic shaft. The reason I pulled this up is everybody knows this one. Tiger played it for a while. The orange shaft out there. They even made a black version now. It's been around for a while, but it's still a great shaft and still something we sell quite a bit of actually. And that goes down. If you look at the torque, it goes from 2.9 down to 2.5. 2.5 torque is a pretty damn low.
It's low, right? So that's a big feel change for an
inch
tip.
That's a big feel change. So it gets quite a bit stiffer feeling for sure. The launch angle stays pretty much the same. It's neutral. This is basically 0, so it's right in the middle. This is kind of their version of the blue board. It's one of the most popular shafts out there. And you'll see some of these iconic shafts all have a similar kind of very traditional looking EI curve.
Yeah.
And it goes up quite a bit stiffer, right? It goes from a 62 on our scale to a 69. So it goes up a little over, half a flex, almost 3/4 of a flex from tipping it. And obviously the frequency goes up from 5.5 to 6.2. So that's, 7 cycles, which is almost 2 flexes as well.
Yeah.
As far as just the cycles itself. But all those things kind of interact with it.
So that's pretty traditional. That's when a club fitter's messing with that one, they're going to get what they think they're going to get.
Yeah. And that's what happens, when you get kind of standard shafts that, are kind of a normal looking EI curve. like a Blue Board or a DI, you kind of get what you think you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's some of the extremes, the really stiff tip stuff or the really soft tip stuff that sometimes you don't get what you're looking for. So
well, let's look
beware
at
there.
The stiffer stuff here. Then we're going into X flexes.
Yep,
now.
we're going into X flexes now, and we've got like an Acra here. This goes from 71 to a 77, so it jumps 3/4 of a flex, which is quite a bit. It goes from 6.5 to 6.9, so half a flex there. Pretty normal stuff there. Here's some of the different ones. There's a Ventus Blue TR.
So this is their latest version.
This is their latest one, yep.
Second generation Ventus. And let's see, this was a lot of people are going to be thinking about putting this in the bag or have this in the bag. So
really popular shaft on tour too, TR, and they're all probably tipped an inch.
But the launch indication there is that it's actually going the other way a little. When you're trimming this one, the launch is it's definitely not going down any lower. It's almost
it's actually going up,
going upwards.
Yep.
And I've had this experience. So I had this golf shaft,
right.
and I thought, oh, I'm going to get it on tip it next time.
Get it a little lower, right?
No, it just didn't do really anything.
Right.
It almost felt like it was a bit higher in my hand, and I was like, oh, okay, that didn't really work out as I wanted to.
Yeah. So some of them do opposite, right? So you assume all shafts when you tip them they're going to go lower.
Yep.
This one doesn't. This actually goes a little bit higher.
A little higher. And then the Ventus Blue 8.
Yeah, this is a beast, right? So this is something that's on 90 in our scale. Which is a true Tour X.
Give someone a swing speed,
It's 115, 120 miles an hour, 25 maybe. I mean, this is
with
up
the
there.
driver.
Yeah,
right.
with the driver. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a real low torque shaft. It's 2.4 to begin with. It goes down to 2.2. This playability number is a 90 on ours. Overall in the shaft, and this is a really beefy shaft. It goes from 6.7 to 7.7, so it goes up 10 cycles. So it does change this shaft quite a bit.
That's amazing. Yep. And it's funny thing again though with these Ventus products, or at least the Ventus Blue stuff that we're looking at here,
right.
is the launch goes almost backwards on itself a little bit.
Yeah.
The more you tip it, the more you almost get a little bit
higher.
higher.
Well, yeah, because one of the reasons is that that's such a strong material they got in the tip there, the Vellicor stuff they got wrapped, and it's a very stiff tip shaft. Most of the really low launching for the most part. Even the red is not really a low launching shaft. But yeah, that's really what happens. It gets
so you're trimming out all the good stuff.
You're taking off the really stiff tip and all the really good material in that tip, and it actually does the opposite. It makes it go higher because you're taking that part out of it.
So someone might be playing that in a fairway wood, and it would be good to increase the to decrease the torque a little bit for a fairway wood. But if you're trying to knock the ball flight down in the driver or straight in, is going to be your best bet.
Go lower, yeah, exactly.
Crazy stuff.
Interesting stuff, right?
I'm glad that I'm on this side of the coin here, and I've got all the information to know how to build these golf clubs like this. This is pretty cool. And obviously, this is just such a small selection. We've got this data on everything.
Yeah,
in
we've
our
got
matrix.
44,500 shafts or so in the database and stuff. So we have this on. I haven't done tipping on all of them, but all the ones we carry that we stock and sell, we're definitely tipping them all now. See what they do.
Yeah, and I guess a wrap up here is that for your peace of mind, after a fitting, our builders have this information, so they know that what the intention of the fitter was is what the builders are going to see, and they know how to build the products the best way.
Yep.
That's what's going to turn into the club that you receive is going to do what you thought it was going to do.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing. So let's reconvene. We're going to talk about some specific shaft families, maybe some tipping within those specific shaft families to see what they do. And just hang in there for more information about golf shafts.
But in general, tipping, the standard shafts, the kind of middle ones, seem to do what they kind of think. But some of the extreme shafts, the high launching ones and low launching ones, watch out when you tip them. They can do some different stuff.
There's only one way to find out. That's come see us.
Yeah. There you go. That's about it, right?
Thanks, Mark.
All right, cheers.